Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. My name is Jess, and today we're going to be resetting this garden. But first I want to tell you guys about Greenstalk sale that's going on for Valentine's Day. They're on sale this weekend. The leaf planters, which is the ones that have the shallower tiers, which makes them great for growing lettuces, leafy things, hence the name, things that don't need like really deep root systems. And you can stack my coupon code ROOTS10 on top of that. I've been using Greenstalks for about 4 years now. I got my first ones. I did not move those with me when we moved here. I actually gave them to my mother. She's still growing in them. They're still growing strong 4 years later. And I love Greenstalk. I love their company. They're made in the United States. We've had the pleasure of visiting their warehouse before. And I think that they are overall a fantastic way to grow food, especially if you're in a limited space. Of course, I'm always telling you guys to turn your waiting room into a classroom. You just learn so much from hands-on experience. And so I think anything that allows you to get some hands-on experience is great. And here, even though I have plenty of space, the Greenstalk leaf is still my favorite way to grow salad greens because they grow up out of these cups, and that eliminates a lot of splashback. You just get cleaner salad greens. So if you've ever homegrown salad greens, getting the dirt out of them is probably one of the hardest things about it, and the leaf really eliminates that problem. So I will put a link down below so you guys can check that out. The sale is through this weekend for Valentine's Day, and this is the 7-tier leaf. I think the 5-tier and the 7-tier are on sale. Maya is on his way here. Oh, there's Jackie. You need help, Jack? You want me to grab one side? I got it.
Yeah, that would be good.
All right, let's take it. Jackson is practicing baseball, and he just put this thing together. Jackson's never played baseball before, and turns out he really likes it. I've told him that he's built like a baseball player. I think he's gonna do really well at it. He's strong. And now I'm embarrassing him. Here's Sweet Mite bringing the soil over to the garden. This looks like a fine place to practice baseball, Jack. Yeah. Good job, I'm proud of you. All right, let's go over here, take a peek in at the Noahs. They are working on the window greenhouse. Hey Noahs. How are y'all?
Oh, doing pretty good. Getting some work done on the greenhouse.
You're doing a great job. So we actually had to change plans a little bit on this, and then I'm really gonna go over there and we're gonna reset that garden. It's been on my to-do list all week. Oh, this is exciting. Very exciting. So as you can see, the bottom of this frame is built. This is 16 by 20. So we had to change plans. All right, I'm gonna get out of y'all's hair. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. We had to change plans on the window greenhouse because our block layer, walk backwards so that my eyes in the sun. Our block layer had an accident. He broke a couple of ribs, and thankfully he's okay. This was not at our house. He had the accident this weekend. He was supposed to start at our house this week, and he called us, and obviously he's off work healing, and he's a very precious man. We're so thankful that he's okay. But we had to kind of make the choice because our original design was that we were gonna brick the floor, and we can't wait a month to build that because obviously we need to start seeds. So we're actually changing the design a little bit. We're still gonna have him come back later. So we're actually building it up because the outside, like around it, is gonna be brick, and then the front porch area. But we changed our design and went back to having a gravel floor in it to give him.
And it might change a little bit between now and then. I'm still kind of like entertaining some other ideas, but for the most part it's going to just be gravel.
Yeah.
So it drains off probably.
Yeah. Were you needing to go back up there or something?
No, I was coming to you.
Okay. So yeah, that's obviously his wellness is the priority there, and I'm glad he's okay. So we're just changing plans so we can move on and essentially get the inside done enough that we can start seeds, and then later we can add brick to the outside where it needs to be. So it's going to be kind of weird, but such is life. All right, so let's assess the garden, see what we've got. mostly this was an utter failure.
You
It was-
utter failure is such a different term now because we have cows.
Not an utter failure, an utter failure.
See, when you're from Arkansas and you don't have cows, utter failure. And now that you have cows, it's like, wait, there's something wrong with the cows, utter?
All right, so what happened here was I got a load of soil. Turns out it was actually municipal compost that was really, really imbalanced, and everything I put in here did terribly. I amended it and then it did grow, but then it got too cold here and then things weren't covered, and so it's just been that time of year. So what we're gonna do for the most part is take out the stuff that's growing here and add just a couple inches of compost on top. So the deal is, when you're growing a garden and you might not have great soil, you'll notice when you plant in that poor soil that your plants struggle. They grow slow, they're spindly, they're weak, they're sickly. A lot of times you'll have much higher pest pressure when you have poor soil. The mindset you really have to adopt when you're gardening is not that you're gonna feed your plants. That mindset gets us into trouble. That mindset is not sustainable. And there are lots of fertilizers that you can buy that talk all about feeding the plants. And the problem is that people will end up just dousing their gardens with all these chemical fertilizers that make their plants explode, but their soil is not thriving. So we need to think of the soil as a neighborhood that we want to be healthy and full of life. You don't want it underwater, you don't want it bone dry, you want it to be aerated, because if it's completely compact, there's no for air and water to move around. And so it's just maintaining the integrity of your soil, the structure of your soil, and the health of your soil is the utmost priority. Healthy soil always grows healthy plants. So always think in terms of feeding your soil rather than feeding your plants. Everything that you put in your garden and on your garden, the number one priority is this going to help the health of my soil? So I like to do essentially no digging, no tilling, which that allows for the structure of and the health of the soil, the integrity of the soil to remain intact. I don't like doing a lot of tilling, especially with raised beds. I just don't really feel like there's a need once you have soil in your containers to do a lot of mixing or tilling up in your containers. What I like to do is just put a couple inches of good rich compost on top of the existing soil. And what eventually happens is, as that's watered, as it rains, the nutrients and the life in that compost is going to wash its way down into the soil, and it is very effective. In my original garden, I started with really cruddy soil because just the cheapest topsoil delivery I could find is what I got. It had a lot of clay in it, it had rocks in it, sand in it, and I filled those beds about 2/3 the way full with that really cruddy soil, and then just put a handful, like a few inches of good rich compost on top of that. And the first year the garden did pretty okay, but after amending that for a few years, when you dug down, and I tried this once, I dug down all the way to the ground level in those beds, and you couldn't really tell where that really cruddy soil had originally been. I knew it was there because I put it there, but after years of having good rich soil on top of it, what happened is all that life, it spread through the soil, it integrated it. We had a good earthworm population, we had just obviously a very healthy microbiome, and that soil got healthy. Now there's another thing to really consider, and we're going to be working on the Greenstalks today too, is that when you have containers, and this is Greenstalks, this is pots, buckets, a lot of people grow in these things. A lot of people think, I want to start gardening, and they get grow bags and they get potting soil and they put it in there, and after a couple of months their plants start looking puny and they're not doing well, their fruit's small. Anything you plant in a container is going to go through the nutrients in that soil in just like a very short period, a couple months. And at that point you're going to have to regularly feed that. So when I do my Greenstalks every year, I don't put new soil in them every season. That would not be economical, and it's not necessary to put new soil in them every season. I take what's in them and spent out. Oh, look at those little rutabagas. We could eat those. And if there's some roots left like this, that's fine. That doesn't really matter. That stuff's just going to break down and add nutrients back into the soil. I do that with all of the different containers. Like this I'll leave. That's chamomile. And for the most part, I get everything out of them, and then I just add a little bit of compost. Today I'm going to be adding some of these worm castings that I actually get from Greenstalk, just I mean, like maybe a quarter of a cup to each one sprinkled along the top. And I find that sufficient as long as I am continuing to fertilize these towers or the containers that I'm using as the season goes on. So I'm gonna plant them, and then about once a week, I'm watering these up here in these top containers where you just pour the water in and it goes down to all the pockets. Or if it were a bucket or something, I'm gonna water that. And at that point, I'm gonna add some sort of fertilizer, like some sort of liquid fertilizer. I really like Neptune's Harvest. You don't have to replace the soil in your containers, just amend it some before you replant. And know that in a container, it's not gonna build the same ecosystem as a raised bed or in the ground. It's not gonna have a healthy worm population. It's going to get spent sooner. And so you're just gonna have to fertilize that more. And if you do that, you can have really great harvest out of containers. So Maya, will you come here? I want to show you what we're keeping. I just love that y'all are sitting there waiting like a sweet little angel. Oh, did my garden helper just bail me for baseball?
He's excited. He said, I have to start training because I'm already signed up. I don't think he knows it's a coach's pitch. So.
Coach's pitch? Well, that's okay. All right, so let's look here. So this never did very well. These are herbs. I have harvested them, but what I want to do here is just take some of that compost and just put it on top of these.
Yeah, I don't want to pull the herbs out.
No, it's not necessary.
They just need nutrients to thrive, right?
Exactly. So with herbs, if you have anything, even if you have an herb plant that's really struggling, if it's got roots and any sort of foliage, honestly, even if it doesn't have a lot of foliage, it will take off if you dress it well, if you compost around it, and once the weather gets better. So right now, we could just put a couple inches of compost on top of this all the way around, and I think water it good, and I think this will take off. We can leave these leaves in here, yeah, because that's just going to break down. Any sort of organic matter like this, it's fine, really, to go ahead and just put the compost on top of that. All right, over here, so this is strawberries. I think going ahead and putting some compost, maybe not like a thick layer, but around these would be good. I actually might use some of the worm castings for that.
Pull out these cabbages.
Yeah, these are actually, there were Brussels sprouts, but these are not gonna. Well, they would have been good, but the turkeys destroyed them. And at this point, even if they did take off, there's not enough time before it gets hot for Brussels sprouts to produce. But this bed, these strawberries should do pretty well, you know, once they start taking off. These are the ones that say Mojo Homestead gave to me. They do need some fertilizer though. This discoloration is some sort of imbalance. All right, so here are my cabbages, which these also were assaulted by the turkeys, and they've made a lovely comeback, and they're actually starting to get heads, and there is enough time for these to go ahead and produce. Now these probably not, these didn't really make the same comeback. They were a little bit worse off, so we'll probably, I guess we can go ahead and pull these out, but let's leave these because I think we'll be able to harvest them. I do want to top dress these, which top dressing means I'm going to take some fertilizer, which in this case is going to be compost, and I'm just going to put it around these cabbages. And what's going to happen when we water is that's going to wash those nutrients down and feed that soil, so therefore feed the plants. Yeah, we'll pull out the red cabbage. I don't think those will have had enough time to head at this point. So the thing with brassicas is they're going to go to seed when it's over like 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 28 Celsius, I think. And where we live, it's going to be that warm in like 2.5 months. So we can plant stuff now. We'll be able to harvest some of it, but things that need to head up or things like Brussels sprouts that take a long time, we don't have time at this point. However, I can plant greens. So Maya, if you want to go ahead and start pulling these out, we need to reset the green stalks. Just go ahead and pull the plants out. Goodness, these were healthy little guys. They had really deep roots. And I'm going to be putting salad greens in one of these, and I'm going to reset the other ones. There are a couple things I'm going to leave.
Pulling these peas on this side?
Yeah. So anytime I've got like this pea plant, if I pull this and the roots break off in there, I just leave those in there. Anything that is like that, like organic material, it'll break down, and anything that breaks down organically in your soil is going to be digested by those microbes. So that's not a bad thing. I would rather leave those roots in than pull out significant amount of soil trying to pull them out.
Pulling these out at the top?
Yeah, these are rutabagas, so wiggle them really good. They were just, I should have thinned them more, but Jackson's been pulling the leaves off to feed to Newt, the bearded dragon. So just wiggle them so we don't lose a lot of soil pulling them out. Nutella. Did I tell you guys that Jackson's bearded dragon Newt is actually a girl, therefore now her name is Nutella.
Do you have anything new, Kate?
Yeah, so I've got this, which we're pulling out. So she's gonna have to be on store-bought salads for a couple weeks.
That's disappointing.
Poor.
Not for me, but for her.
Nobody wants no store-bought salads, do they?
I'm sure she'll be fine.
Now over here, this rosemary is gonna stay in, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull these out because I can identify the seedlings. These are actually calendulas that I sowed a while ago, and they're just coming up, and I'm gonna leave them. So when I have things like little things like this in and I'm adding more soil, I'm just careful to put the soil around them instead of just completely covering them up. This is sad. This is a Chinese cabbage. I had high hopes for it, but the bottom's starting to rot out before the top actually develops. Hey, Ben. I bet Honey would love it. Oh, hey, Toby. I bet Honey would love it if you went and gave this to her. Here, Toby, actually, why don't you take the camera and y'all can show taking that to Honey, okay?
Okay. Honey? Food?
Nope.
I think she's coming.
Now, down here, these are mixed kale varieties over here. And these actually, I think, will take off with more nutrition. So I want to try to not pull these out. These were starting to grow really nicely. I'm going to thin some of them out. I'm going to just pull out the ones that are puny. These were starting to grow really nicely until the turkeys came. And on Thanksgiving, destroyed my entire garden, which I find the irony of that to be like. Here, I'm thinking more compost around these kale plants, and I bet that they take off. If not, we'll reset that with something else later. But really just getting the green stalks prepared to be replanted well. It was really my main focus in these two beds right here. Look at those little baby carrots. We're gonna go ahead and pull these just because there's only a handful of them, and I want to get like a good layer of soil over here. Oh, here comes Falcor. Katie runs across the field. Yeah, those are coming out. She looks like Falcor. Never ending story. Y'all have heard me say that before. Honey is in heat, guys.
Still.
She is really wanting something. It has been nonstop. She's yelling at the direction of like way across the street. There are bulls over there. I have some things that I could say about that, some jokes that I could make, but it would not be appropriate.
Family's channel.
Family channel. One of the things that I'm really wanting to do this year, which right now we're just kind of pressed for space as far as like places to set things up. That they're going to be primarily left alone. But once we get our barn fully situated and we start working on greenhouses and the shop and all that, I'll have plenty of spaces to have little projects going. But I'm really wanting to get into aerating compost teas. If you make compost teas, you can take compost, either worm castings or compost like that you made. Speaking of which, I need to update you guys on our compost. We moved it out of the barn, but you can take compost and you can make it stretch a lot further. You aerate them, that's even better. And basically you're just allowing all of those microbes to multiply in like a liquid form, and then you put that over your soil, and it's allowing those microbes then to spread through that soil and populate the soil. Because when we talk about these things being alive in the soil, they multiply by giving that life the correct environment, the environment that they need. Then it just brings about more life. And then the more life you have in the soil, the healthier your garden. Oh, I have been talking this whole time trying to open this because I didn't want to go get a knife. Here we go. Breakthrough. The beauty of making those teas is you stretch your stuff, so you're making your own fertilizer. When I was saying about 1/4 to 1/2 of a cup, I don't get a measuring cup. I'm just guesstimating on the size of my hand. So I'm just literally just sprinkling these on top. If you wanted to just kind of move it around here in the top layer, you could do that. Now, what if you are getting to a new season, and let's say your containers, maybe they were planted and then they finished and you left the dead plant in them, and they got really, really dry, and so your soil was hydrophobic, which means it wasn't absorbing water, and then you're like, I don't know what to do. This soil seems completely ruined. Hydrophobic soil is when soil has been so dry for so long that it actually repels water. And this is very common in containers because obviously they dry out easier than the ground does. The ground's going to hold more water than a container. So hydrophobic soil is definitely tricky, but it's not irreversible. If you have hydrophobic soil in your containers and you're wanting to try to salvage that soil and use it again, that would be a case where you might want to mix some good soil or organic matter all throughout the container. That would be the one exception that I would tell you, okay, go ahead and break up that soil and get it mixed up with organic matter. Because when soil has become hydrophobic, it can't break the surface tension of water. It's like so frail that it can't break the surface tension of water. So what you need to do is when you have your hydrophobic particles and their next two particles that are able to absorb water, eventually that proximity to those particles that can absorb water will help those break the surface tension of water. Another thing you can do is put like a squirt of dish soap in your water. So a lot of dish soaps are antimicrobial. Don't use those. You don't want to put antibacterial anything in your garden. We want the things that are alive in our garden to stay that way. But if you get like Castile soap, Dr. Bronner's, I think is what it's called, is a good one, and put a squirt of that in the water and then pour it, or if you get some dish soap that doesn't have the antimicrobial stuff in it, and put a squirt of that in and pour it over your garden, that actually breaks the surface tension of the water, soap does. And so it doesn't make water more wet, but it makes it function as if it's more wet when it comes to very, very dry soil. And if you've put Dawn dish soap on your garden, it's not a big deal. I mean, there's good, better, best here. And sometimes we have to do things that might not necessarily be the best in order to get to the place where things are going good. I feel like I just shared like 17 tips in one breath, so sorry. Sometimes I do that, don't I, Maya?
I don't know, I checked out. Something about good bacteria, microbial, Dr. Bronner's.
Glad we're on the same page.
I'm sure that'll connect somewhere.
I'm glad we're on the same page here. All right, so Maya's laying a few inches of this good compost down on top of this bed. Not a lot. There's not a lot of space here. We're just going to fill it up to the top. And I'm not going to work this in. I'm just going to lay it down. I'll plant into it. And as I water this regularly, all of that rich life in this compost is going to wash down into that soil. I amended this already at the end of the season, but it was just too late for those plants. I'm going to set you guys up here because we have probably like 10 minutes of light left, and we're going to do this on a time lapse. But you can watch. Okay, so now I'm doing something that you might consider a little strange if you only thought of amendments as feeding your plants. I'm watering all this stuff. I'm watering my green stalks. I'm gonna water these beds with the fresh compost on it, because even though I'm not planting anything tonight, it's almost dark out here, I'm gonna go ahead and water it, because as I put water on this compost and in these green stalks, it's gonna run through those worm castings. It's actually allowing all of those nutrients to go ahead and incorporate in my soil, because even though I haven't put seeds in that soil yet, it's still full of life, and I want to take care of it even whenever I'm not growing something in it. So here's my little calendula plants and my rosemary. That's all that's in this bed. I did have Maya go ahead and leave that trellis. I'm not really sure what I'm going to put on that yet, because I'm going to have a garden full of tomatoes up in the big garden, so that's what I would normally put on a trellis. Maybe, see, I'm going to do a lot of green beans up there too. That's only 8 feet.
You could do cucamelons.
Say it again?
I said you could do cucamelons.
Cucamelons. That's a great idea right there, sweet Maya. You are so smart. He's He's so smart. Andy gardens.
Slate's taken.
I bet these herbs just take off. I'd like to get some more compost on here, but we don't have to do it tonight. I know we got to cook dinner. So as you can see, it is now getting dark. We still have to milk a cow. Make dinner for our kids.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, so good job.
Good job. Congratulations.
Look how pretty it looks. Looks so nice. This is a blank slate, just ready for us. Does this make you feel giddy at all? Giddy? Yeah. Excited? Happy? Thrilled?
Happy?
Effervescent?
I don't even know what that means.
We're back in gardening content again. So exciting. Thank you guys for hanging out with us today. I bless you. Until next time.